Mike Donovan wiped the grease off his hands with an old rag and glanced at the clock hanging on the wall of his small auto repair shop. It was already 4:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and snowflakes were starting to fall outside the garage windows. His heart lifted a bit at the sight. Maybe they'd have a white Christmas after all. That should do it. Mrs. Wilson, Mike said, handing the keys back to his last customer of the day, a kind elderly woman who'd been coming to his shop for years. Just a loose belt and a quick oil change. You're all set for your trip to see your daughter. Thank you, dear, Mrs. Wilson said, pressing a small tin of homemade cookies into his hands. Merry Christmas. I don't know what I'd do without you in this town. Mike smiled, touched by the gesture. Just doing my job. Drive safe now. Roads might get slippery with this snow coming down. As Mrs. Wilson's car pulled away, Mike took a deep breath and looked around his shop, Donovan's Auto Repair. It wasn't much, just 3 bays, basic equipment, and walls covered in old car posters and family photos. But it was his. He'd built this business from nothing after learning the trade from his dad. It wasn't making him rich, but it kept the bills paid and gave him purpose in their small town of Riverdale. Tonight was special, though. For the first time in 3 years, Mike was going to make it to his parents' house for Christmas Eve dinner. They'd moved to the neighboring state after retirement, about an hour's drive away. And between the busy shop and bad weather, he'd missed the family tradition the past few years. His mom had called twice already today, reminding him not to be late. The ham goes in at 6, Mikey, she'd said in her voice message. Dad's made his special eggnog and your cousins are coming too. Don't you dare work late tonight. Mike smiled at the thought as he started closing up the shop. At 42, he was still Mikey to his mom, and probably always would be. He did a final walkthrough, turning off the equipment and lights. The snow was coming down harder now, big thick flakes that were starting to stick to the ground. Better get on the road soon, he thought. He grabbed the small bag of presents he'd wrapped last night from his office, pulled on his heavy work jacket, and flipped the sign on the door to closed. After locking up, he stood for a moment in the cold air, watching his breath form clouds as he gazed up at the darkening sky. The Christmas lights along Main Street twinkled through the falling snow, and for a moment everything felt peaceful and right in the world. His truck, a beaten-up old Ford that he kept running through sheer mechanical willpower, sat waiting for him in the small parking lot, already gathering a dusting of snow. Mike brushed off the windshield, tossed his bag onto the passenger seat, and climbed in. The engine grumbled to life after 2 tries. He'd been meaning to look at the starter, but never seemed to find the time to fix his own vehicle. Just as he was backing out of his parking spot, his phone rang. Mike glanced at it. Unknown number. Probably a robocall. He almost let it go to voicemail, but years of being the only mechanic in town had trained him to answer. Someone might be in trouble. Donovan's Auto, he answered, wedging the phone between his ear and shoulder as he put the truck in drive. Hello? Is this the mechanic? The voice on the other end was female, tense with worry. Our van broke down on Highway 16, about 10 miles outside of town. We've got 3 kids with us and the snow's getting bad. Mike closed his eyes for a second, already knowing what this meant for his Christmas plans. Are you somewhere safe? Off the road? Yes, we managed to pull over to the shoulder. The engine just died completely. We tried calling the towing company, but they're closed for the holiday. Of course they were. Bill's Towing shut down at noon on holidays. A fact well known to locals, but not to travelers passing through. Do you have heat in the vehicle? Mike asked, already turning his truck around toward the highway. For now, yes, but it's getting colder. We were trying to make it to my parents' house in Lakeside for Christmas. The woman's voice cracked slightly. In the background, Mike could hear children asking questions, their voices high with excitement or anxiety. He couldn't tell which. Okay, sit tight. I'm on my way. Keep the heat running if you can, but only every 10 minutes or so to save your battery. What kind of van is it? A 2019 Honda Odyssey, dark blue. Thank you so much. We're the only vehicle stopped on this stretch. I'll find you. Hang in there, Mike promised, ending the call. He sat for a moment in his idling truck, then reluctantly picked up his phone again to call his mother. This wasn't going to be an easy conversation. Hey, Mom, he said when she answered. I've got some bad news. 20 minutes later, with his mother's disappointed voice still echoing in his ears, Mike was driving slowly down Highway 16, wipers fighting a losing battle against the thickening snowfall. The roads were getting treacherous. Few cars out now as people had already reached their Christmas Eve destinations. His headlights caught the reflective hazard lights of a vehicle up ahead on the right shoulder, and he felt a mix of relief and resignation. There it was, a dark blue minivan with its hazards blinking weakly in the gathering storm. As he pulled over safely behind it, he could see faces peering anxiously from the windows. 3 small children and what looked like their parents. Mike grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight and emergency toolkit from behind his seat. As he stepped out into the biting cold, snow immediately soaking into his work boots and the wind cutting through his jacket, he thought about the warm living room at his parents' house, the smell of ham and cinnamon that would be filling the air right now. Christmas Eve dinner was starting in 15 minutes. He wasn't going to make it. Again. But as a hopeful little face pressed against the minivan's rear window, small hands waving frantically at the sight of him, Mike knew he was exactly where he needed to be. Some things were more important than tradition, and no family should be stranded in a snowstorm on Christmas Eve. "Help's here," he murmured to himself as he trudged through the deepening snow toward the stranded family. "Let's get you folks back on the road." The snow was falling so hard now that Mike could barely see a few feet in front of him. The wind whipped around his body as he approached the stranded minivan, sending icy needles against his face. He knocked gently on the driver's side window and it rolled down to reveal a man about his age with worry lines creasing his forehead. "You the mechanic?" the man asked, relief washing over his face. "That's me, Mike Donovan," he said, extending a gloved hand. "Let's take a look at what's going on with your van." "Tom Rodriguez," the man replied, shaking Mike's hand firmly. "This is my wife Anna and our kids in the back. We can't thank you enough for coming out on Christmas Eve." Anna leaned across from the passenger seat, her dark hair framing a face tight with concern. "The children are getting scared of the storm. We were supposed to be at my father's house hours ago." Mike nodded understandingly. "Let's see if we can get you back on the road quickly then." He peered into the back where 3 children, a boy around 10 and 2 younger girls, were bundled up in winter coats, watching him with wide eyes. "Hey there," Mike said with a gentle smile. "Don't worry, we'll figure this out." Tom popped the hood and both men stepped out into the swirling snow. Mike propped it open and shined his flashlight into the engine compartment, his experienced eyes quickly scanning for obvious problems. "What happened when it broke down?" he asked, his breath visible in the freezing air. "It started making a weird knocking sound, then just died completely," Tom explained, hugging himself against the cold. "Won't turn over now, not even a click." Mike tried the starter, listening carefully. "Battery's still good," he mumbled, more to himself than Tom. He checked a few connections, then his face grew serious. "I think your timing belt snapped, and that might have caused some valve damage. Is that bad?" Tom asked, though his expression showed he already suspected the answer. "It's not great," Mike admitted. "Normally I'd tow it to my shop and order parts, but with the holiday—" He didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what it meant. They weren't getting this van running tonight with a simple fix. "Let me try something," Mike said, digging deeper into the engine. The cold was seeping through his work clothes now, his fingers getting numb despite his gloves. The wind had picked up, howling around them and rocking the vehicles. This was quickly becoming a dangerous situation. Mike's phone buzzed in his pocket. He already knew who it was without looking. His mom, wondering where he was, probably setting his plate at the table, the family waiting to say grace before their Christmas Eve dinner. Anna rolled down her window. "The heat's barely working now," she called out worriedly. "The kids are getting really cold." Mike made a quick decision. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. You folks need to get somewhere warm. I can't fix this tonight without parts." "But all the motels will be full for Christmas," Anna said, her voice quavering. "And we're still an hour from my father's house." Mike nodded grimly. "I know. I'm going to create a temporary bypass that might get you running just enough to limp to the next town. It won't be pretty and it's not a permanent fix, but it's our best shot right now." He went back to his truck, digging through his emergency kit and toolbox for anything he could use. His phone buzzed again and then again. Missed calls from his parents. He should call them back. Explain the situation. Tie-in. But there wasn't time now. The temperature was dropping by the minute, and this family needed his full attention. For the next 2 hours, Mike worked in the brutal cold, his hands growing clumsy and painful as he attempted a complex repair with limited tools and parts. He fashioned an improvised solution using spare hoses, zip ties, and a creative workaround that went against every professional instinct he had. But desperate times called for desperate measures. The Rodriguez children watched from the windows, their breath fogging up the glass. The youngest girl had started crying softly, asking repeatedly when they would get to Grandpa's house. The snow had built up several inches on the road now, the occasional passing vehicle slowing to a crawl as it navigated the treacherous conditions. Mike's phone had gone silent after a while. He knew his parents had probably given up waiting and started dinner without him. His mom would be hurt, his dad disappointed. 3 years in a row now. Some son he was. "Hand me that wrench," Mike said to Tom, who had stayed outside helping despite the cold, holding the flashlight steady when Mike needed both hands. They'd barely spoken. Both men focused on the task and fighting the elements. "You're missing Christmas with your family, aren't you?" Tom asked quietly as he passed the tool. Mike paused for a moment, then continued working. "Yeah, dinner at my parents'. It's tradition." "I'm sorry," Tom said simply. Mike shrugged, his shoulders stiff with cold. "It's okay. This is more important right now." And strangely, he meant it. As disappointed as he was about missing dinner, he couldn't leave this family stranded. It wasn't just professional pride. It was something deeper, a sense that this was where he was supposed to be tonight. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity in the frigid darkness, Mike closed the hood. "Give it a try," he said, stepping back. Carefully. Tom slid back into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then miraculously rumbled to life, running rough but running nonetheless. "You did it," Anna exclaimed, clapping her hands together in relief. The children cheered from the back seat. Mike held up a cautioning hand. "It's not fixed, just patched. Drive very slowly. Keep the heat low to reduce engine load and get it to a proper garage as soon as you can. This is just to get you somewhere safe tonight." Tom got out of the van and surprised Mike by pulling him into a tight hug. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've saved our Christmas." "You should follow us to my father's house," Anna suggested, rolling down her window again. "It's not far from here, and you're in no condition to drive all the way back in this storm. You're soaked through and probably half frozen." Mike was tempted. He was indeed chilled to the bone, his clothes wet from lying in the snow under the van, his fingers painfully numb. But he shook his head. "Thanks, but I should head back. You folks be careful on the road. Take it slow." They tried to pay him, Tom pulling out his wallet and offering far more than Mike's usual emergency rate. But seeing the children's relieved faces in the back of the van, knowing they'd make it to their grandfather's house for Christmas after all, Mike waved the money away. "Consider it a Christmas gift," he said. "Just pay it forward someday." The Rodriguez family thanked him profusely, promising to come to his shop after Christmas for a proper repair. As they slowly pulled back onto the highway, the children waved enthusiastically from the back window until the minivan's taillights disappeared into the snowy night. Standing alone on the shoulder of the road, snow collecting on his shoulders, Mike finally checked his phone. 7 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and several texts, all from his parents. The latest text from his mom was simple and hit him like a punch to the gut. "We waited as long as we could. Dad says Merry Christmas. Food's in the fridge for when you can make it. Be safe." Mike looked at the time. 9:47 p.m. Christmas Eve dinner had come and gone without him. Again. Bone-weary and disheartened, he climbed into his truck and began the slow journey back to his empty apartment. By the time he arrived home, it was nearly midnight. Christmas Day was just minutes away, and Mike would be spending it alone. As he peeled off his wet clothes and took a hot shower to chase away the bone-deep chill, he tried to console himself with the knowledge that he'd done the right thing. That family would be together for Christmas, safe and warm at their grandfather's house. That had to be worth something. Still, as he collapsed into bed, the image of his parents sitting at their table with an empty chair where he should have been haunted him. Some traditions weren't meant to be broken, and he'd failed them 3 years running now. "Merry Christmas to me," Mike muttered as he drifted off to sleep. His body exhausted, but his conscience at least clear. Tomorrow was another day. Maybe he'd drive out to see his parents in the afternoon, if the roads were passable. Little did he know that tomorrow would bring a visitor who would change everything. Christmas morning dawned crisp and bright, sunlight glinting off the fresh blanket of snow that had fallen overnight. Mike awoke later than usual, his body stiff and sore from hours of working in the cold. For a moment he lay still, listening to the quiet of his small apartment. No family bustle, no Christmas music, no smell of coffee or breakfast cooking. Just silence. With a groan, he dragged himself out of bed and shuffled to the kitchen to make coffee. His apartment was sparsely decorated for the holiday. Just a small tabletop tree with a few ornaments and a single strand of lights around his living room window. He hadn't seen the point of doing more when he'd be at his parents' house for the actual holiday. Except he wasn't. And now it was Christmas morning, and he was alone. Mike checked his phone. A few text messages from friends wishing him Merry Christmas. Nothing new from his parents. He'd have to call them later, apologize again for missing dinner. Maybe see if the roads were clear enough to drive out there for a late Christmas lunch. As the coffee brewed, he moved to the window and looked out at the transformed world. The plows had already been through, clearing the main streets, though a good 8 inches of snow covered everything else. His little town of Riverdale looked like a picture postcard. Rooftops and tree branches heavy with snow, holiday decorations popping with color against the white backdrop. Well, he said aloud to his empty apartment, at least it's a white Christmas. He spent the next hour in his armchair, coffee in hand, half watching a Christmas movie marathon on TV while scrolling through social media. Everyone else seemed to be having a picture-perfect holiday. Photos of families opening presents, elaborate breakfast spreads, kids in matching pajamas. Mike tried not to feel sorry for himself, but the contrast between their celebrations and his quiet morning was stark. He was considering whether to heat up some leftover pizza for Christmas breakfast when a knock at his door startled him. Mike wasn't expecting anyone. The auto shop was closed for Christmas Day, and his few close friends in town were all with their own families. Curious, he went to the door and opened it to find a woman standing there, holding a large covered dish. It took him a moment to recognize her, Ana Rodriguez from the night before. She was dressed nicely now, not in the travel clothes from yesterday, her dark hair falling in gentle waves around her shoulders. "Merry Christmas," she said with a warm smile. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion. Your shop was closed, obviously, but the lady at the diner knew where you lived." Mike was too surprised to speak for a moment.
"How did you—"
"I mean, what are you doing here? Is everything okay with the van?" "The van is fine for now, thanks to you," Anna replied. "We made it to my father's house safely last night. The children are there opening presents, but I wanted to bring you this." She held out the dish. "It's not much. Just some of my father's special Christmas tamales and my own holiday bread pudding. A thank you for what you did for us." Still bewildered, Mike accepted the dish. "You didn't have to do that. I was just doing my job." Anna shook her head firmly. "No, what you did went far beyond your job. You missed your family's Christmas Eve to help strangers in a snowstorm. My father insists on meeting you properly. He's waiting in the car, actually." She gestured toward the street where an expensive-looking black SUV was idling. "Your father? He came too? He wouldn't have it any other way," Anna said with a small laugh. "Do you have plans for Christmas lunch? We'd love for you to join us." Mike glanced back at his empty apartment, the half-finished coffee, the TV playing to no one. "I was thinking of driving to see my parents, but with the roads—" "Please consider joining us," Anna pressed gently. "My father is very particular about expressing gratitude. He wasn't happy when he learned we tried to pay you and you refused." Mike hesitated. Spending Christmas with strangers seemed odd, but the alternative was sitting alone in his apartment until the plows cleared enough roads for him to attempt the drive to his parents' house. "Let me grab a coat," he decided, "and maybe I should meet your father first." He quickly pulled on shoes and a jacket, not bothering to change out of his sweatpants and old t-shirt. As they walked toward the SUV, Mike noticed it was much nicer than he'd initially thought. A top-of-the-line Range Rover with custom wheels. The back door opened, and an older man stepped out. He was in his late 60s with silver hair and the same warm brown eyes as Anna, dressed in a cashmere sweater and wool coat that probably cost more than Mike's monthly rent. Despite his obvious wealth, there was nothing pretentious about his manner as he extended his hand. "Gabriel Vasquez," he said in a deep, accented voice. "You must be the mechanic who saved my grandchildren from spending Christmas in a snowbank." Mike shook his hand. "Mike Donovan." "It wasn't that dramatic, sir. Just doing what needed to be done." Gabriel's grip was firm, his gaze appraising. "My son-in-law tells me you refused payment for your help." Mike shifted uncomfortably. "It was Christmas Eve. Didn't seem right to charge extra just because of the timing. Gabriel nodded slowly as if confirming something to himself. Would you join us for Christmas lunch, Mr. Donovan? My chef has prepared more food than even my family can eat, and I would like to properly thank you for what you did. Something in the older man's tone made it clear this wasn't just a casual invitation. Mike glanced at Anna, who gave him an encouraging nod. I don't want to intrude on your family time, Mike said hesitantly. Gabriel waved his hand dismissively. Nonsense. Family time is precisely what Christmas is about, and today you would be an honored guest. Please. Put that way, how could he refuse? Let me just change into something more appropriate, Mike said, suddenly conscious of his shabby clothes. You're fine as you are, Gabriel insisted. We're not formal people, despite what my car might suggest. A smile crinkled the corners of his eyes. My wife says I have expensive taste in vehicles, but a simple taste in people. 20 minutes later, Mike found himself driving behind Gabriel's Range Rover, following them to a large house in the upscale neighborhood on the other side of town. He'd called his parents on the way, explaining that he'd been invited to Christmas lunch by the family he'd helped last night, promising to drive out to see them tomorrow instead. His mother had sounded disappointed but understanding. You're a good boy, Mikey, she'd said, always helping others. Your father's proud of you, you know. He just misses you. The words had lodged in Mike's throat as he'd ended the call. He wasn't sure he deserved his parents' understanding after letting them down again. Gabriel's house was impressive but not ostentatious. A large, beautiful home with tasteful Christmas decorations and a circular driveway where several expensive cars were already parked. As Mike pulled his battered truck in beside them, he couldn't help feeling out of place. But that feeling evaporated the moment he stepped inside. The house was warm and filled with the sounds of laughter, conversation, and Christmas music. The 3 children from last night spotted him immediately and ran over, the youngest girl grabbing his hand. You came, she exclaimed. Look, everybody, it's the snow mechanic. Before Mike knew what was happening, he was being introduced to the entire extended Rodriguez-Vasquez family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all treating him like a returning hero rather than a stranger. Tom clapped him on the back, thanking him again for the rescue, while Gabriel's wife Maria enveloped him in a motherly hug that reminded him painfully of his own mom. Any man who would miss his Christmas to help my family is welcome at my table, she declared, leading him to a seat of honor beside Gabriel. The lunch was unlike anything Mike had experienced before, a feast that blended traditional American Christmas dishes with elaborate Mexican specialties. The conversation flowed easily, with family members eager to hear about Mike's work, his life in Riverdale, and how he'd managed to get the van running with makeshift repairs in a snowstorm. That kind of ingenuity is rare these days, Gabriel commented, refilling Mike's glass with expensive wine. Most mechanics would have insisted on a toe and parts. Mike shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Sometimes you have to work with what you've got. Indeed, Gabriel said thoughtfully. Tell me, Mike, how long have you owned your shop? About 7 years now. Took over from my old boss when he retired. And business is good? The town supports you well? Mike hesitated. The truth was his small shop had been struggling for years. The big chain auto centers in neighboring towns had been slowly eating away at his customer base, and the rising cost of equipment and parts made it hard to compete with their prices. It's challenging, he admitted finally. Small town, not many cars, but I get by. Gabriel nodded, exchanging a look with Anna that Mike couldn't interpret. Perhaps after lunch we could speak privately for a few minutes? I have a proposition that might interest you. Puzzled but intrigued, Mike agreed. As the meal wound down and family members drifted to the living room for gift exchanges and dessert, Gabriel led Mike to a handsomely appointed study lined with books and family photographs. I owe you an explanation, Gabriel said, gesturing for Mike to take a seat in a leather armchair by the fireplace. My daughter didn't find you by chance this morning. I asked her to bring you here specifically after hearing what you did last night. Mike's confusion must have shown on his face, because Gabriel continued with a small smile. You see, Mr. Donovan, I'm not just a grandfather who's grateful for your help. I'm also a businessman who recognizes exceptional talent and character when I see it. And last night you demonstrated both in abundance. Gabriel walked to his desk and picked up what looked like a business portfolio. Have you ever heard of Vasquez Automotive Group? Mike's eyes widened slightly. He had indeed heard of them, a chain of high-end garages that serviced luxury vehicles across 3 states. They had a reputation for excellent work and even better customer service. Yes, of course, Mike replied. You're one of the best in the region. Gabriel nodded, pleased. We are, and we're expanding. I've been looking to open a location in Riverdale for some time now, but I hadn't found the right person to manage it. He fixed Mike with a penetrating gaze. Until now, Mike felt like he must have misheard. I'm sorry, what are you saying exactly? I'm saying, Mr. Donovan, that I would like to offer you a position. Managing director of our new Riverdale location, with a starting salary that I believe you'll find quite generous. Gabriel handed him the portfolio. Full benefits, of course, and a 20% ownership stake in the location itself. Mike opened the folder with shaking hands, his eyes immediately finding the salary figure. It was more than 3 times what he currently made, far more than he'd ever dreamed of earning as a small-town mechanic. I don't know what to say. Mike stammered, genuinely at a loss for words. Why me? You barely know me. Gabriel smiled, the warmth reaching his eyes. I know what matters. You're skilled enough to perform a complex repair in a blizzard with limited tools. You're honest enough to refuse payment when you felt it wasn't earned. And you're selfless enough to sacrifice your own family Christmas to help strangers in need. He spread his hands. Those are exactly the qualities I look for in the people who represent my business. Mike stared at the portfolio, his mind racing. What about my shop? My current customers? We would absorb your existing business, Gabriel explained. Your customers would become our customers, but they would still have you, the mechanic they trust. Only now you'd have better equipment, more resources, and a team to help you. It seemed too good to be true. The kind of opportunity that happened in movies, not in real life. And certainly not to struggling small-town mechanics like Mike Donovan. I need time to think about this, Mike said finally. Of course, Gabriel agreed. Take the portfolio home, review the details. Call me after the holiday with your decision. He leaned forward slightly. But I hope you'll say yes, Mike. People with your combination of skill and character are rare. I'd be proud to have you as part of my company. As Mike left the study, his head spinning with the unexpected turn his Christmas had taken, the sounds of the family celebration washed over him again. The Rodriguez children were playing with new toys. Adults were laughing over dessert and coffee. And for a brief moment, Mike felt a connection to these people who had been strangers just 24 hours ago. Anna caught his eye from across the room and raised her coffee cup in a small toast. Mike smiled back, clutching the portfolio that might just change his life completely. Merry Christmas, Mike Donovan, he whispered to himself. Maybe miracles do happen after all. The days after Christmas passed in a blur for Mike. He reopened his shop on December 26th, business as usual, but nothing felt usual anymore. The portfolio Gabriel Vasquez had given him sat on his desk, its contents memorized after countless readings. The offer was even more impressive upon closer examination, not just a management position and ownership stake, but also relocation assistance, an advanced training program at Vasquez's corporate headquarters, and the option to bring his current employees along with similar bumps in pay and benefits. You look like you've seen a ghost, said Hank, Mike's part-time assistant as they worked on Mrs. Peterson's ancient Buick. Been that way since Christmas. Something happen? Mike tightened a bolt before answering. Got a job offer. A big one. Hank whistled low. Big enough to take you away from this place? Never thought I'd see the day. Neither had Mike. His shop had been his life for 7 years. Every dent in the walls, every oil stain on the concrete floor told a story. He'd poured everything into this business, scraped by during the lean months, celebrated small victories when they managed to turn a profit. The thought of walking away left him with a hollow feeling in his stomach, but the opportunity Gabriel offered was undeniable. Financial security, growth potential, resources to actually help people properly, not just cobble together solutions with whatever parts he had on hand. I haven't decided yet, Mike said, though he knew he was lying to himself as much as to Hank. That evening, after closing up, Mike drove the now-cleared roads to his parents' house as promised. The delayed Christmas visit was subdued but warm, his mother fussing over him as always, his father quiet but pleased to see him. Over reheated Christmas dinner, Mike told them about the Rodriguez family, the roadside repair, and Gabriel's unexpected offer. It sounds too good to be true, his father said, practical as always. What's the catch? That's what I've been trying to figure out, Mike admitted. But I can't find one. I've researched Vasquez Automotive. They're legitimate, respected. Their employees seem happy. Their business is growing. His mother reached across the table to squeeze his hand. And what does your heart tell you, Mikey? Mike sighed. That I'd be crazy not to take it. But also that I'm afraid of change. The shop it's been my whole identity for so long. His father nodded slowly. When I started my carpentry business, I was terrified. Thought I'd fail within a year. But sometimes you have to take the leap, son. This could mean I'd be able to visit more often, Mike added, watching his mother's face brighten at the prospect. More stable hours, actual vacations. Maybe I wouldn't miss Christmas Eve dinner 3 years running. His mother's eyes misted slightly. We'd like that. But this decision isn't about us, honey. It's about what's right for you. Later, as Mike prepared to drive back to town, his father pulled him aside in the hallway. That shop of yours, he said quietly. It was always meant to be a stepping stone, not a final destination. Your grandfather taught me that a man should always look for ways to grow, not just survive. This Vasquez fellow sees something special in you. Maybe it's time you saw it too. The words stayed with Mike on the drive home, echoing in his mind as he passed the spot on Highway 16, where he'd helped the Rodriguez family just a few nights ago. His life had changed in that moment, though he hadn't realized it then. The next morning, Mike called the number Gabriel had given him. I'd like to accept your offer, he said when Gabriel answered. If it's still on the table, excellent. Gabriel's voice boomed through the phone. I was hoping you'd say that. When can you come by the house to sign the paperwork? We have much to discuss about the new location. They arranged to meet that afternoon. Before heading over, Mike walked slowly through his shop, running his hands over tools he'd used thousands of times, remembering all the vehicles he'd fixed, all the people he'd helped. It felt like saying goodbye to an old friend. When he arrived at the Vasquez home, he was surprised to find not just Gabriel waiting, but also Anna, Tom, and a team of people who were introduced as Vasquez Automotive executives. They had architectural drawings spread across the dining room table, plans for converting a vacant commercial building on Main Street into a state-of-the-art garage facility. We've been holding this property for 6 months, Gabriel explained, just waiting for the right person to run it. As they went through the business plans, Mike's apprehension began to fade, replaced by growing excitement. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a vision for something he could build, something that would combine the personal touch of his small shop with resources he'd never dreamed of having. We want to maintain your connection to the community, Anna explained, pointing to design elements that incorporated the Donovan name into the new Vasquez branding. The people here trust you. That's valuable. And we're not just about luxury cars, Gabriel added. Your elderly customers with their 20-year-old sedans? They'll still be welcome. We want to serve the whole community, not just the wealthy parts of it. By the time Mike signed the contracts, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across Gabriel's elegant living room. With a few strokes of a pen, Mike Donovan became more than just a small-town mechanic. He became a business partner to one of the most successful automotive companies in the region. Welcome to the family, Gabriel said, shaking his hand firmly. We begin renovations next week. Training for you and your team starts the week after that. What made you so sure I'd say yes? Mike asked curiously. You had all this ready to go, Gabriel's eyes twinkled. I'm a good judge of character, Mike. When a man gives up his Christmas to help strangers without expecting anything in return, that tells me everything I need to know about him. That's someone I want working with me, not just for me. As Mike drove home that evening, a weight he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying seemed to lift from his shoulders. For years, he'd been barely keeping his head above water, working longer hours for diminishing returns, watching his dreams of growth and expansion fade with each passing month. Now suddenly, the future looked different, brighter, full of possibilities he'd thought were beyond his reach. He pulled into the parking lot of his shop, soon to be the former Donovan's Auto Repair, and sat for a moment, looking at the familiar storefront. Tomorrow he'd tell Hank and his other part-timer Joe about the changes coming. He'd start the process of notifying customers, planning the transition, closing one chapter of his life and beginning another. But tonight, He just wanted to sit with the knowledge that sometimes doing the right thing, even when it costs you something precious, can lead to unexpected blessings. His phone buzzed with a text from Anna. "Dad's already ordering new equipment for the shop. Hope you like shiny tools. Welcome to the team, Mike." Mike smiled as he texted back a simple "thank you." Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Best Christmas present ever." Back in his apartment, Mike pulled out a calendar and circled next Christmas Eve. Below it, he wrote, "Dinner at Mom and Dad's, no excuses." Then he added, "Invite the Rodriguez-Vasquez family." The idea of his simple working-class parents hosting Gabriel Vasquez and his family made Mike chuckle. But somehow he had a feeling they'd all get along just fine. After all, the most important things in life, kindness, generosity, family, those were values they all shared, regardless of their backgrounds or bank accounts. Mike fell asleep that night with a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. His life was about to change dramatically. But the core of who he was, the mechanic who'd stopped to help a stranded family on Christmas Eve, no matter the personal cost, that would remain the same. And that, he realized, was what Gabriel Vasquez had seen in him all along. 1 year later, Christmas Eve snow fell gently outside Mike Donovan's new home, the flakes dancing in the glow of the Christmas lights that lined his front porch. Inside, warmth and laughter filled every room as final preparations for dinner were underway. The aroma of roasting turkey, ham, and his mother's famous stuffing mingled with the scent of pine from the tall Christmas tree in the corner of the living room. "Do you think we have enough food?" Mike asked, watching his mother arrange another plate of appetizers. "There's only going to be 15 of us." Eleanor Donovan swatted her son playfully with a dish towel. "Better too much than too little. Besides, Gabriel told me his grandchildren have hearty appetites." Mike smiled, still amazed at how quickly his parents had bonded with the Vasquez family over the past year. What had started as a business relationship had evolved into a genuine friendship, especially after Gabriel had helped his father expand his small carpentry business into a successful custom furniture operation. "Need any help in there?" Mike's father called from the living room, where he was entertaining Anna's children with stories about Mike's childhood mishaps. "Just keep those kids occupied for 10 more minutes." Eleanor replied, checking the turkey one more time. Mike glanced at his watch. Almost 5 o'clock. The Rodriguez-Vasquez family would be arriving any minute now, and everything needed to be perfect. This Christmas Eve dinner wasn't just a meal. It was a celebration of how much their lives had changed in a single year. The transformation had been remarkable. Within 3 months of signing Gabriel's contract, Donovan's Auto Repair had been completely renovated and reopened as Vasquez Donovan Automotive Center, a gleaming facility with state-of-the-art equipment and 6 full-time employees. Mike's former part-timers, Hank and Joe, were now shift supervisors with benefits and salaries that had allowed them both to finally buy homes of their own. Mike himself had thrived under Gabriel's mentorship. The training at Vasquez corporate headquarters had updated his already considerable skills, and the business classes guy, Brielle, insisted had given him confidence in managing the larger operation. He'd moved from his small apartment to this house, nothing extravagant but spacious and comfortable, with a garage large enough for him to tinker with his own projects on the weekends. Most importantly, for the first time in years, Mike had work-life balance. He no longer worked 7 days a week just to keep the lights on. He visited his parents regularly. He'd even started dating again, though that was a topic his mother brought up far too often for his comfort. The doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. "They're here," Eleanor exclaimed, hurriedly removing her apron. "Mikey, go let them in while I fix my hair." Mike opened the front door to find the entire Rodriguez-Vasquez clan standing on his porch, arms full of gifts and food containers, their faces bright with holiday cheer despite the cold. Little Maria, Anna's youngest daughter, broke free from the group and threw herself at Mike's legs in a fierce hug. "Mr. Mike, we brought tamales and presents, and Grandpa has a surprise." Mike laughed, sweeping the little girl up into his arms. "A surprise, huh? Well, we better get you all inside before you freeze." The next few minutes were a happy chaos of greetings, coats being hung, food being arranged on the already full table, and gifts being added to the impressive pile under the tree. Gabriel embraced Mike warmly, then shook hands with Mike's father as if they were old friends, which in many ways they had become. "How's business?" Gabriel asked, accepting a glass of eggnog from Eleanor. Couldn't be better, Mike replied honestly. We're booked solid through January and the customer satisfaction ratings are at 98%. Gabriel nodded approvingly. I knew you were the right man for the job. And how's the expansion going? Mike's father asked. The Vasquez Automotive Group had been growing rapidly, with 3 new locations opened in the past year alone. Ahead of schedule and under budget, Gabriel said with pride, thanks in large part to the systems Mike developed for the Riverdale location. We're implementing them company-wide now. Mike felt a flush of satisfaction. The inventory management software he'd created had streamlined operations significantly, reducing costs while improving service times. Gabriel had been so impressed that he'd put Mike in charge of technology innovation for the entire company, a part-time role that challenged him in new and exciting ways. Dinner's ready, Eleanor announced, and the group moved to the large dining table that dominated Mike's dining room. They settled in, the Donovans, the Rodriguez family, and Gabriel and his wife Maria, an unlikely gathering that somehow felt perfectly natural. Mike's father stood to say grace, and as they all bowed their heads, Mike felt a swell of emotion. 1 year ago today, he had been working in a blizzard, missing this very tradition, feeling like a failure as a son. Now here he was, hosting both families in his new home, his life transformed in ways he could never have imagined. Amen, his father concluded, and glasses were raised in a toast. To new friends and family, Eleanor said warmly, and to roadside miracles, Anna added with a knowing smile at Mike. The meal was everything a Christmas Eve dinner should be. Delicious food, animated conversation, occasional bursts of laughter, and the warm glow of being surrounded by people who cared for one another. Mike found himself watching the scene with a sense of wonder, still hardly believing this was his life now. After dinner, as the adults relaxed with coffee, and the children played with toys they'd been allowed to open early, Gabriel pulled Mike aside. I have something for you, he said, handing Mike a small wrapped box. A token of appreciation for an exceptional year. You didn't need to get me anything, Mike protested. You've already done so much. Gabriel waved away his objection. This is different. Open it. Mike unwrapped the box to find a set of keys inside. He looked up confused. What are these for? Your new position, Gabriel said with a smile. Regional Director of Operations for the Northeastern Division. Your own office at headquarters, company car, and a significant bump in salary. Mike stared at the keys in shock. Regional Director? But that would mean less time turning wrenches, more time developing people and systems, Gabriel confirmed. The Riverdale location runs like clockwork now. You've proven you can build something special. I need you to do it on a larger scale. I don't know what to say, Mike admitted, genuinely stunned by the offer. Say yes, Gabriel urged. You'll still be based here. I'm not asking you to move. Just to expand your influence. The company needs your vision, Mike. Before Mike could respond, Anna approached with her phone in hand, her expression serious. Dad, Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation. Just got a call from Ben at the shop. There's a family stranded on Highway 16. Car broke down in the snow. Sounds like a fuel pump issue. They were heading to visit relatives for Christmas. Mike and Gabriel exchanged a look, both recognizing the echo of last year's events. I'll go, Mike said immediately, already reaching for his coat. We'll both go, Gabriel corrected. I may be the boss now, but I started as a mechanic too. Some things you never forget. Mike's mother overheard and rushed over. You're leaving? But we haven't done presents yet. It's an emergency, Mom, Mike explained. Family stranded in the snow. We won't be long. Instead of disappointment, Eleanor's face softened with understanding and pride. Of course you have to go. That's who you are. She patted his cheek affectionately. That's who you've always been. To Mike's surprise, Tom stood up as well. I'll come too. 3 sets of hands are better than 2. Within minutes, the 3 men were bundled up and heading out the door, tools loaded into Mike's truck. As they pulled away from the house, Gabriel chuckled softly. What's so funny? Mike asked, carefully navigating the snowy streets. Just thinking about how history repeats itself, Gabriel replied. 1 year ago tonight, a broken-down car changed all our lives. And here we are again. Mike nodded, understanding completely. The difference is this time I'm not missing Christmas. I'm celebrating it exactly the way it should be celebrated, by helping others. As they drove through the quiet, snow-covered town toward the highway, Mike felt a deep sense of contentment. The promotion, the keys in his pocket, the new responsibilities, all of that could wait until tomorrow. Tonight was about remembering what truly mattered: kindness, generosity, and the willingness to help strangers in need. "You know," Tom said from the back seat, "when we get back there's pie. My wife made 3 different kinds. And presents," Gabriel added, "including that surprise little Maria mentioned." Mike smiled, keeping his eyes on the snowy road ahead. "Then we better hurry. Fix this car, get this family where they need to go, and get back to our own celebration." "Sounds like a plan," Gabriel agreed. "After all, that's what Christmas is all about, bringing people home safely." As they approached the spot where the stranded car's hazard lights blinked weakly in the darkness, Mike couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey of the past year. From struggling small-town mechanic to regional director, from lonely Christmas to a house full of family and friends, from one act of kindness on a snowy highway to a completely transformed life. Some people might call it luck or coincidence, but Mike knew better. Sometimes, when you give without expecting anything in return, the universe has a way of giving back tenfold. A roadside breakdown had led to a roadside miracle, one that continued to unfold in ways he could never have imagined. And as he pulled over behind the stranded car, tools in hand and friends at his side, Mike Donovan knew one thing with absolute certainty: he wouldn't have it any other way.